Anyway, the next part of this, second part of the talk, are treaties. Basically, there were four different distinct treaties made through the United States government from the alien encounter. First one was in 1944. Second one was 1954. Third one was 1962. Fourth one was 1979. I'll go backwards. The 1979 treaty was a total violation of, incidentally, in Dulce, New Mexico, where I got badly hurt. 66 Secret Service and Delta Force people lost their lives, 22 of which were on loan from other countries, Israel, Germany, Norway, South Africa, if I remember. I was the only geological engineer down there to analyze the situation. The government almost basically lied to us. They kind of said that alien presence might be there, but they didn't tell us that they knew that there was an alien base and that they'd already attempted to make contact. And of course, this was disturbing indeed. In fact, a couple of the engineers who managed to survive put the project under duress. Another part of the talk are the intelligence community. The Nazi group, the World War II Nazi or Hitlerian group, the Fatherland Intelligence Agency trained our CIA, our OSS, which became our CIA, and other intelligence communities predominantly, and are still being employed today as we, in quote, the federal government today trains Bosnian troops on American soil, and from what I understand, that's totally illegal. That's another topic. Now, the third part of the talk is the types of aliens. Two large grays that I shot and killed. I can't tell you how ugly they were, and I can never tell you how graphic the stench was. But in the cave, there were large cauldrons or tanks. They kind of looked like a big oval cattle feeding tank, but they weren't. They were special, looked like a stainless steel or metallic tank. They were filled with alien and human body parts, and generally glands and what looked like some kind of blood. Now, I've always been taught that blood after a few minutes starts to congeal, but this was one of these vessels in the melee had tipped over and all this bloody liquid had spilled out and was a mess, and it was definitely not coagulated. How they did this is anybody's guess. So if we remember anything about cattle mutilations, we might also think that basically the blood in these cattle are totally drained out. There's no blood around, in quote, the murder scene of the cattle. So this might be the way they're doing it. Now, whether this is sponsored by our government or other governments is a good guess. If it were up to me, I'd say yes, we're in the thick of it. We made a pact with the aliens, and therefore we must know what their agenda is. And also, the federal government must also further know that if they keep the big lie going, they must be in the thick of it in the worst way. And if that's the case, they're an enemy of gross concern.
Who is we?
We, in quote, the federal government. Department of State, Department of the Air Force, Navy, Army, Marine Corps, basic force services, plus the military policing facilities. They got to handle it. They're all hooked into the black projects as a whole. In this part of the black projects, there's kind of like an outer sphere of normal black projects, like building everything from these kind of aircraft here and doing these kind of experiments here, to building aircraft like this, places like this. And that's kind of on the outside. On the inside of this circle, we get a tighter group of people who really know what the main agenda is, maybe even the enslavement of the human race as a remnant, or something as a scenario like that. And then finally a third category whereby none of the other two categories would even hint at the possibility or the horror of what's happening. And it's a very compartmentalized system. I can only begin to guess, even though that I've been in the thick of things from the outer core to the second core level, but I have no idea what's in the third core level. No way at all. And because it's so complicated, I've heard some of this run by me. It's so fantastic. It makes a Star Wars or a movie or a Star Trek novel or a Babylon 5 novel look like a kid's toy. I mean, it's too fantastic for me to believe. So I can assume that it might be a otherworldly plan or scenario for taking over the planet, but once again, I can't prove it, so I don't talk about it. Right here, only basically to discuss basically what I know of the alien agenda and through deep underground military basing and the application that I did during this kind of activity in the U.S. government. I'll have question and answer period in a short time. I've already talked about firefights. I will tell you right now, I'm breaking major federal law. I'm breaking my entire security oath system. Security oaths, in fact, here's a copy of my 1985 security clearance. You might zoom in on that if you care to. Do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, it's got a picture of me. It's got Department of the Air Force. It's got control number here. It's got a digital control number and name here. It's got a UPC stripe here. It's got a level L. That was only issued to people that worked at Groom Lake and Area S4. And our restricted zone R4808E. This is a computer chip camera in the card itself. You didn't wear the card like you wore another security card. This one wasn't worn. This was used to get you into the main gate. And there was a large machine. There was a large machine that looked like a kind of like a curved. The bottom part, you put the card in, and you put your thumbprint on. You're supposed to actually, some of them had two of them. I don't have a second thumb, so this one was made with one. There's normally two here, and the L for a normal person would be up through the UPC stripe. So there was one, and I put my thumb there on the bottom, and if it would flash green, I'd flick the switch, and then I'd insert the card in the second part of the control unit, and there'd be a thing that would hold my forehead, and I could block off my left eye, and I'd stick this thing up to my right eye, and it would take a picture of my retina. And then if the green light went off, I could remove my card, and I could leave it at the guard shack, and I'd wait for anywhere from 45 minutes to several hours waiting for the next shift to start. I'm breaking all my security oaths by coming out in the open and talking about this, because not only are we dealing with a kind of technology, I believe, that we should be out, that should be out in the public. Should, at least this kind of 50 and 60-year-old material should be out in the public. I feel that in coming clean, so to speak, I don't know quite how to explain it other than the fact that when I initially was told these underground bases were for security in case of nuclear attack in the United States, and it was a total lie. I found out that aliens were actually entrenched in half of these bases, and these bases, by the way, cost a minimum of $17 billion a piece. The black budget garners $508 billion a year, $1.023 trillion every 2 years. That's 2-year-old information. It's probably more like 1.3 trillion now, which is about 1/4 of the gross national product of the United States. It's no wonder why our economy is kind of up and down here and there. Once again, you might ask, well, how in the heck? We've only been told, we the public have only been told there's a total defense budget of $447 billion, so how can that be $500 billion going on behind the scenes? First of all, black budget means hidden budget. Hidden budget is totally hidden from congressional view and oversight, cannot be audited by the U.S. Treasury system at all. It is a separate, independent taxing body entity within the federal government structure, which, by the way, is illegal. Totally illegal. It's primarily financed by drug operations by the CIA and the NSA and the Drug Enforcement Administration, and now the FBI is implicated also. Recently there was an FBI man that came out of the cold, so to speak, and told all, only to find himself murdered, and he took a vacation in England, got himself murdered. That was in the paper about 3 years ago. Anyway, 9 attempts on my life have been taken since the 1st of January of this year. Well, I've been shot at, been run off the road. 3 times I've been run off the road, one of which is I'm a very good driver. I used to race cars for somewhat of a hobby type living. I used to race everything from Formula One on down, motorcycles and stuff like that when I was a kid, so I lived kind of on the edge all the time. So I became a very good driver and a very defensive driver, and so if somebody's trying to run me off the road, like before my Vegas talk, I dropped a friend of mine off at 29 Palms area and saw another friend at the Marine Corps Hospital who's dying of cancer. And on the way out of there, you have to skirt around a whole mountain range. You just can't take the easiest way in a straight line out. It'd be nice, but it doesn't work that way. You have to skirt around these mountains. And I had a Ford Taurus with a police interceptor motor, and roughly an 8-liter motor. It's a real monster. And there were 2 long Ford E350 vans, and they all had Air Force markings on them. They all had guns, and they were all shooting, and they were missing. And I flew by them and took a picture of their, blur. I took a picture of them, got a very good picture of their license plate. And then they sped up and tried to squeeze me in this way, and then finally I just slid right in the middle of the road, and the road was just wide enough for basically one-way traffic. And one of them rolled over, and kept going down for about 300 or 400 feet down a very steep ravine. The other one was a shallow ravine about 10 feet deep. And I just kind of peered over, unhooked my seatbelt, peered over, and there was a big fire started on down there. I could hear people screaming, but I'm sorry, it's their deal. I just kept on going. That was one way. Recently I got shot at when I was with a retired FBI agent. We were going to go to a Patriot talk show down near Salem, Oregon. And I got shot here. It's what's called the CIA cocktail. I don't have normal ribs after Dulce, New Mexico fiasco, where my ribs were burnt and cauterized. My fingers are burnt off of me. etc. I have a plastic plate in here, a nylon plate that has bumps on it, looks like ribs and everything. So those bullets just kind of just lodged in this thick 5/8" thick plastic, movable plastic thing on the inside, and that was dug out. And once again, here I am recuperating from another problem, and all because I'm trying to bring the American public, and I love my country more than my life, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this ridiculous group of things by coming clean, but I feel I have to because the American public has not only been lied to, but when I was asked to, by the intelligence community within the Air Force to continue my operations and black budget work, stealthy work, what would I think if they said that I would be betraying the American public? I told them to go fly it, go stuff it or whatever. I says I won't be a party to that. And I walked out of the room, and somebody tried to tell me to come back, and I says, out of my face, fella, you're on the ground. And looked at my face and went on the ground. And I walked away, and I made a decision. See why. That's why I'm here talking. I also want to get a little political sided here, although I don't like to. Right now we have an out-of-touch, runaway federal government structure that really doesn't care about the way you and I feel. They manipulate evidences of crimes, as several instances, both in Waco and other. The Waco hearings should have been a wake-up call to most who were watching, even if they'd only watched a piece of it. It's once again proves the federal government structure that's just running away with everybody's freedom, and they run roughshod over. They've actually become kings and queens over us, and our forefathers told us exactly what would happen if we took a certain stand, if we made laws to legislate God out of our system, we would have a similar problem. If we made laws or had too many people making laws within our government structure, we would have a similar problem that we're facing today. We're facing a form of tyranny and totalitarianism. Incidentally, you might want to throw a few statistics by you. And it's quite provable in a number of talks given recently, both by the United Nations and others. The United Nations is entrenched in our country. They're training our troops on. Our troops are being trained by the United Nations in the United States, and I think that's kind of an oddball system. Russian troops are being trained on basically Montana and North Dakota and northern tier states, Washington, upstate Washington, etc. There's a stockpiling of Russian tanks and hardware by the U.S. Army. For what purpose? Also, we purchased at the cost of some $38 billion all the Russian nerve gas. Nerve gas is, their nerve gas is extremely long shelf life. We're destroying our